when a plane vanishes from the sky just moments after takeoff.
Ahmedabad, in that 1 minute when the AI-171 crashed, leading to the loss of life in total of about 270 people.
The world watches, but few expect what comes next. In the case of Air India Flight 171,
the investigation into the devastating crash of Air India Flight 171 has intensified. The Air India team.
What began as a routine journey turned into a terrifying 45-second descent that no one could fully explain. Until now. Behind the smoke, wreckage and silence lay a trail of overlooked clues that stunned even seasoned engineers. What did they find hidden in the data? And why is one tiny decision during takeoff now haunting global aviation? What was once theory is now something far more unsettling. The answer, as it turns out, wasn't just technical, it was something deeper. Curious? Let's start with the moment everything changed. Timeline of the catastrophe. On June the 12th, 2025, Air India Flight AI-171 began its departure from runway 23 at Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport at approximately 1:38 p.m. local time. The aircraft, a 11-year-old Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, had just completed pre-flight checks and was cleared for takeoff, beginning what should have been a routine journey to London Heathrow. Within 30 seconds of rotation, a mayday call was transmitted by the crew, and the aircraft entered an abnormal climb profile. Flight radar data captured an unsteady altitude increase before the signal abruptly stopped, prompting immediate concern from air traffic control. The black box data, recovered and currently being decoded in New Delhi, has already confirmed that the aircraft reached an altitude of less than 900 feet AGL before entering a sharp descent. Timeline reconstruction based on CVR, cockpit voice recorder, and FDR, flight data recorder, input reveals an escalation of cockpit alarms related to stall warnings and possibly configuration alerts. These indicators suggest that something occurred during the transition from climb to cruise, possibly linked to aerodynamic control surfaces or a miscommunication between the crew and onboard automation. The jet's path transformed in about 45 seconds. The jet reportedly turned completely upside down in the air, an odd occurrence before ending up striking the upper floors of a hostel building in the Megani Nagar area. The transponder immediately ceased to reflect any altitude variations post-inversion, suggesting a failure in structure or a shutdown of the system. The controllers who were monitoring the aircraft reported an eerie, silent experience after the mayday, with no follow-up transmission relayed by the pilots or first officer, which would typically be found during any critical phase of flight. This brief period is now a focal point of investigation for accident investigators. Aviation experts are as much interested in what went wrong as in how so much could go wrong within a block of 45 seconds. The speed of events during this time will determine whether AI-171 met its demise because of a single technical fault, chain faults, or an unrecoverable system interaction. This will be achieved by comparing a mixture of radar data, black box analytics, and flight crew profiles. The crash is indeed a bitter reminder of how quickly an ordinary flight can devolve into a tragedy of monumental proportions. But what lay beneath the smoke told a story far more haunting than anyone expected. Inside the wreckage. Following the impact, the crash site of Air India Flight AI-171 quickly transformed into a logistical and humanitarian emergency zone. The aircraft had plunged into the hostel wing of a medical college, instantly igniting multiple floors and triggering secondary explosions. Rescue crews arrived to find a multi-structure inferno, with fires fueled by jet fuel and the building's infrastructure. Thick black smoke and a chemical haze from burning composite materials severely hampered visibility and air quality, forcing responders to rotate in short shifts with respiratory gear. The urban density of Megani Nagar complicated access routes, requiring fire engines and ambulances to navigate narrow roads and crowded residential lanes. Several nearby structures suffered partial collapse due to the blast wave, and authorities had to clear debris quickly to create pathways for medical evacuation. The rescue operation became a round-the-clock mission involving firefighters, police, city engineers, and hospital workers, many of whom had never encountered a disaster of this magnitude. Makeshift triage units were set up outside the zone perimeter. Temporary morgues were established in collaboration with local hospitals in order to manage the upsurge of fatalities. In total, over 270 bodies were recovered, many of them burned beyond recognition or smashed into pieces, courtesy of the force of the impact. Mobile DNA labs and forensic dentists were flown in from New Delhi and Mumbai to assist with victim identification, which was made even more urgent due to religious and cultural expectations for timely funeral rites. Designated collection points were set up for the public for personal belongings so that they can be catalogued in an effort to match them with DNA profiles. Faced with these most terrible of circumstances, the efficiency and courage of local responders saved further casualties in the surrounding buildings. The state government collaborated with national disaster management authorities to put in place mental health services for first responders and families of the aghast, many of whom witnessed scenes of destruction, most desolate. The recovery phase, technically complete by 72 hours, was only the beginning of a long journey through grieving, traumatization, and rebuilding for Ahmedabad, the sole survivor. Amid the overwhelming tragedy of Air India Flight AI-171, a single story of survival emerged, that of 40-year-old Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, the lone survivor among 274 fatalities. Seated in 11A, Ramesh was one of the few positioned near the section of the aircraft that remained marginally intact after the impact. Despite suffering serious burns and multiple fractures, he managed to escape the fiery wreckage moments after the crash, offering a rare first-hand account of the disaster. His survival stunned both investigators and the nation, quickly making him a symbol of resilience in the face of unimaginable destruction. In an exclusive interview from his hospital bed, Ramesh recounted the seconds leading up to the crash. He described hearing an unusual mechanical noise and feeling the left side of the cabin buckle, suggesting that part of the aircraft's fuselage began disintegrating even before impact. According to him, the door panel near his seat blew open, exposing the cabin to open air and enabling his escape. "I thought I would die," he told NDTV, his voice quivering. "There was metal tearing, smoke, screaming. I crawled toward the light." His account aligns with structural assessments that indicate premature fuselage rupture due to stress or impact forces during descent. The details through which Ramesh survived offer insight into the findings of the crash investigation. His mention of the collapsing left side of the cabin with the door coming down, detached while airborne, could suggest that there was structural failure of the forward fuselage before ground impact, perhaps induced by the aerodynamic imbalance or a secondary explosion. His position in the aircraft, which was not too far from the wing tanks or way back in the tail section, may have provided some relative protection to Ramesh when the aircraft plowed apart. These events are now matched against black box data and debris examination to form the chronology of structural failures. Apart from being a major technical issue, Ramesh's story also touched the popular imagination of the masses. While social media and news have hailed the escape as miraculous, it also serves as one of those solemn reminders of the randomness and violence in aviation accidents. Medical teams treating him testify that he remained mentally alert despite the physical trauma, and he has since cooperated extensively with investigators. His words have turned into a fragile window for the families of victims into the last few moments of their loved ones. And for aviation experts, his survival is, besides being a miracle, perhaps the key to discovering what actually took place during the last minutes of Flight AI-171. Theories behind the crash. As investigators continue to unravel the causes of the Air India Flight AI-171 disaster, attention has zeroed in on a critical window, the first 30 seconds after takeoff, when the aircraft began to stall and ultimately plummet. A key theory gaining traction involves a possible flap configuration error. Aviation YouTuber and former pilot Captain Steve proposed that the co-pilot may have mistakenly retracted the flaps instead of the landing gear, during the initial climb, depriving the aircraft of crucial lift. Observers on the ground supported this theory, noting the lack of typical wing flex, a clear indication that the flaps, which help generate lift at low speeds, were not properly extended. Further complicating the picture are maintenance-related red flags that suggest a potential mechanical component in the disaster. Preliminary logs from the Ahmedabad maintenance hangar revealed that the left wing's flap actuator had been serviced just weeks before the crash. However, quality control sign-offs were delayed by a week due to spare parts shortages, raising concerns about whether the actuator was correctly calibrated or tested post-servicing. Experts caution that a misaligned actuator or faulty sensor could have sent incorrect signals to the cockpit or the flight computer, misleading the crew about flap positions. Investigators are also probing into whether confusion between automated systems and manual inputs comes into play. The Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner is equipped with modern safeguards. However, misinterpretation of the state of flight controls for the aircraft by pilots is cited as a well-known hazard. Independent analyst on safety, Crystal Jen, emphasized that, in modern jets, a moment is enough to result in misconfiguration, especially during takeoff, and worse devastation is wreaked by a muddle. Given the time frame in less than 45 seconds from takeoff to impact, there was virtually no margin for recovery if anything failed critically or was even misused by the crew. The environmental angle appears to have been almost completely ruled out as a cause. There was clear meteorological evidence from the main weather reporting stations around the country: good visibility, standard pressures, and no wind shear. Radar scans did not reveal any bird strikes. There was no sign of bird ingestion found by the engine inspections. The focus has now turned sharply towards human factors and internal systems. The recovered flight data and cockpit voice recordings are currently being analyzed in New Delhi to reveal the exact configuration of flaps, slats, throttle levers, and pilot control inputs in the moments leading up to the crash. Until such time as those data are completely decoded, both mechanical failure and human error remain viable and perhaps interrelated primordial causes of this disaster. Regulatory response. In the wake of the Air India flight AI-171 crash, regulatory agencies moved swiftly to initiate investigations and impose immediate safety measures. India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, took the lead, launching a comprehensive inquiry into the airline's operations, pilot training protocols, and aircraft maintenance practices. The crash triggered the largest safety audit of Boeing 787 Dreamliners in Indian service to date, involving all 34 aircraft in the national fleet. The focus of these inspections included takeoff performance parameters, electronic engine controls, and fuel system integrity, particularly for aircraft equipped with GE, GNX engines. To ensure transparency and technical depth, the DGCA invoked Annex 13 of the Chicago Convention, which governs international aviation accident investigations. This allowed for formal collaboration with both the US National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, and the UK's Air Accidents Investigation Branch, AAIB. These agencies dispatched expert teams to Ahmedabad to assist in black box analysis, structural forensics, and human factors evaluation. The two flight recorders, the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder, were secured from the wreckage and sent to New Delhi, where their data is being decoded under joint supervision. With unabated media glare, the Director General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, initiated Operation Double Check, a more extensive oversight for safety issues beyond AI-171. Inspectors conducted ad hoc audits of airline maintenance records, supply chain documentation, and compliance with service bulletins. Lapses in procedures were found not only in Air India, but also across multiple operational facilities, including overdue hydraulic fluid analyses and inspection logs that were unsigned. While many of the violations might be construed as minor, the totality of findings raised grave concerns regarding systemic deficiencies in quality controls and oversight within the Indian civil aviation sector. India invited international aviation regulators such as the CASA from Australia, TSB from Canada, and EASA from Europe to conduct workshops on threat and error management, TEM. These long workshops took place in full-motion simulators and were centered on automation failure, configuration error, and emergency communication breakdowns in New Delhi and Bengaluru, aiming to instill a proactive safety culture that is resilient under pressure in pilots and ground crew alike. With the crash of AI-171 exposing critical vulnerabilities, this incident has triggered the judgmental eyes of the world's regulators. Will India set a new standard on post-crisis civil aviation reform? While new safety protocols took shape on the ground, a darker question loomed in the air. Was the aircraft itself hiding something? Boeing 787 Dreamliner under scrutiny. Before the crash of Air India flight AI-171, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner held a strong reputation for safety and innovation. Since entering commercial service in 2009, the aircraft has logged over 7 million flight hours without a single hull loss, making it one of the most reliable wide-body jets in operation. Its advanced composite fuselage, fuel-efficient aerodynamics, and next-generation cockpit systems earned it a place as the flagship of long-haul fleets for dozens of airlines worldwide. That sterling record came into sharp question on June 12, 2025, when I-171, a 11-year-old Dreamliner, crashed less than a minute after takeoff, slaying 274 people and casting a shadow over Boeing's premier aircraft line. Central to the investigation is the Dreamliner's GNX engines, developed by GE Aviation. These engines, while praised for their performance and low emissions, are now being examined for potential system vulnerabilities, particularly in the areas of electronic engine control and fuel delivery integration. While early inspections of the wreckage found no signs of bird ingestion or external engine damage, investigators are focusing on how these engines responded to possible configuration errors, especially if thrust or flap settings were compromised during takeoff. The DGCA's post-crash inspections of all Dreamliners in India specifically emphasized systems tied to thrust management and takeoff performance. The crash has visited far-reaching consequences upon both Boeing and GE Aerospace in the financial and reputational sense. The heavy stock futures of Boeing, dropping almost 9% in the following days and reflecting investors' nervousness about an impending crisis concerning one of its star airplanes, showed the same. For Boeing, still recuperating from the 737 MAX denouement, the crash drew scrutiny over its design philosophy and automation logic, and questioned its overall quality assurance processes. Meanwhile, GE Aerospace, as the GEnx engine supplier, had to fend off inquiries from regulators and stakeholders regarding maintenance delays noted in the AI-171 logs. The interplay between hardware complexity and human-machine interaction is now at the center of investigations. Even when investigations are still ongoing, the crash of AI-171 has already ignited entire discussions in the aviation industry. Safety experts went about reassessing the advanced automation's role in scenarios of pilot error when manual overrides or configuration missteps can supersede system safety. Boeing has pledged total cooperation with authorities while dispatching technical teams for assistance with black box analysis and reconstruction of airframes. Meanwhile, even until the final investigation report is released, Boeing and GE will still come under increasing scrutiny over all matters concerning the accident, but also regarding how the increasingly complex systems will wreak havoc on a new type of preventable tragedies in modern aviation. Automation versus pilot proficiency. The crash of Air India flight AI-171 has reignited a long-standing debate in the aviation industry, whether modern pilots are becoming too reliant on automated flight systems at the expense of core manual flying skills. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner, like many new generation aircraft, features a highly automated flight deck designed to reduce pilot workload and improve efficiency. However, safety analysts warn that such automation can sometimes lead to mode confusion, a situation where pilots misinterpret the aircraft's automation state, especially during high-stress phases like takeoff and landing. In the case of AI-171, early theories suggest that an erroneous flap retraction may have occurred, possibly because of confusion between similar control switches or over-reliance on automated sequences. Independent aviation safety expert Crystal Jen emphasized that while modern jets are equipped with robust protections against pilot error, no system can compensate for improper configuration during critical moments. In AI-171's case, the lack of wing flex, as observed by eyewitnesses, indicated a possible misconfiguration of the aircraft's flaps, either through human input or incorrect system feedback. This incident underscores a broader concern in aviation circles, that highly automated cockpits may erode pilots' muscle memory and instinctive responses, particularly when sudden intervention is required. The ultra-short timeline, just 30 seconds between takeoff and impact, offered almost no margin for recovery, highlighting the importance of immediate, confident manual handling. Airlines and flight training schools are rethinking their course curriculum to answer these types of concerns. Air India has already made changes to its cadet training program that include adding simulator hours on manual recovery and misrepresented system cues. These modules teach pilots to recognize and correct automation errors in real time, especially during initial climb and descent, where the greatest number of accidents for any reason occur. In the meantime, flight instructor associations in the region are beginning to adopt automation down training counselor requirements, which state that a pilot must now hand fly an aircraft under abnormal conditions without the autopilot, thus going back to the fundamentals of airmanship. In terms of the industry, after the AI-171 tragedy, international workshops and knowledge-sharing discussions have been held to discuss the human-automation balance. In the interest of regulatory action, aviation authorities from Australia, Canada, and Europe have worked together with India's DGCA to conduct workshops on threat and error management, TM, which include scenario-based simulations of automation failures and configuration errors. There is an increasing feeling that, while automation is an irreplaceable aid in aviation, manual flying skills should remain at the forefront of pilot competency. The crash of Flight AI-171 reminds us soberly that technological sophistication is only as safe as the human hands guiding it. Political reactions and diplomatic condolences. The crash of Air India Flight AI-171 sent shockwaves beyond India's borders, prompting immediate and heartfelt responses from political leaders and governments around the world. With 53 British nationals, 7 Portuguese citizens, and 1 Canadian among the 274 confirmed dead, the tragedy became an international event, drawing global attention and mourning. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak described the day as one of profound sorrow and quickly dispatched a team from the British High Commission to assist Indian authorities with identification, consular services, and support for the victims' families. In a deeply symbolic gesture, the British royal family honoured the crash victims during the annual Trooping the Colour ceremony, traditionally a celebration of the monarch's official birthday. Members of the royal family were seen wearing black armbands, and a moment of silence was observed in memory of the lives lost aboard AI-171. The tribute, broadcast across British media, served as a poignant expression of solidarity with grieving families in both the UK and India, where many passengers shared cultural and familial ties. The cheerful statements of condolence were issued as soon as the governments of Portugal and Canada realised the gravity of the calamity. They pledged full consular support and assistance for the family of their countrymen who died in the disaster. Meanwhile, both foreign ministries from Portugal and India were contacted for the repatriation process. On the other hand, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Canada confirmed the engagement of its consular teams in identifying victims and offering counseling on trauma to family relatives. Both countries vowed to leave no stone unturned in demanding an investigation, an international one at that, for transparency and cooperation within borders. Such an outpouring is, however, not limited to the government, but, in some cases, has spilled into social media across several countries around the world. There are now trending hashtags such as #JusticeForAI71 and #PrayForAhmedabad in India and the UK. Candlelight vigils took place in London, Lisbon, Toronto, and in major Indian cities like Mumbai, New Delhi, and Bengaluru, with communities coming together to honour the memory of the deceased. In addition, the International Trenches Against AI 171 revealed the reality of an intricately woven modern air travel network and the common human ties that bind countries in collective grief, justice, and compensation. In the wake of the Air India Flight AI 171 disaster, the issue of compensation and accountability emerged as a central concern for grieving families. The Tata Group, which privatized Air India in 2021, swiftly announced a compensation package of approximately 1 lakh crore, approximately $120,000 for each deceased passenger's family, along with full coverage of medical expenses for survivors. While this offer was seen as a meaningful step, many families, particularly those of foreign nationals, questioned whether the amount was sufficient given the emotional, financial, and legal implications of the loss. The situation sparked a broader discussion about jurisdictional fairness and the adequacy of India's legal frameworks in handling mass casualty aviation cases. The issue became more complex due to inconsistencies in international legal standards for aviation-related compensation. While India's compensation laws are bound by specific caps under domestic statutes, countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, and Portugal allow for higher payouts and broader categories of non-economic damages, including pain, suffering, and loss of future earnings. International human rights advocates and legal experts raised concerns that victims' families may receive disparate treatment based solely on nationality or where their claims are filed. These legal imbalances have prompted calls for multinational coordination to ensure fair and equitable outcomes for all affected parties. Several law firms in Mumbai and New Delhi have set up class action consortia for the benefit of relatives of victims of the crash, and have planned to file these suits not just against Air India, but against Boeing and GE Aerospace as well, for possible negligence in design, maintenance, and system reliability. Initial discussions among these groups have dealt with whether procedural lapses like delayed quality control sign-offs on the aircraft's flap actuator would amount to corporate liability. Given that the crash spanned a number of different jurisdictions, legal proceedings are expected to be expensive and lengthy, with great implications for the future of international aviation litigation. It was highly disheartening to note that legal wranglings did place heavy ethical burdens upon issues. In frustration, the families of those who lost their lives have expressed their woes regarding the sluggishness in identification timelines, limited updates, and perceived bureaucratic impediments. Some said the authorities had not been very clear on where or how these relatives could file claims, particularly in respect of relatives living abroad. These grievances have sparked social media campaigns and public demonstrations, holding power not only for compensation, but also for accountability, transparency, and justice. Monetary compensation is one component of the healing journey. What the survivors are really demanding is truth and accountability, so that the tragedy inflicted by AI 171 may be transformed into a real opportunity for change. International aviation law scholars support the establishment of an international body for aviation disaster trials, with cases pertaining to multinational casualties specifically. In a recent symposium at the University of Toronto, Professor Eleanor Duarte, who specializes in cross-border liability, said, "When victims span multiple legal systems, the pursuit of justice becomes fragmented and inconsistent. A unified tribunal could provide a neutral forum, standardize reparations, and reduce delays caused by jurisdictional disputes. Although this proposal is yet to be realized, it is acquiring support from AI 171 advocacy groups abroad, especially among those who have become frustrated due to the disparities in legal recourse available on the basis of nationality. Hence, the incident has further renewed calls for legal reform, not just in India, but in the international aviation community as well. While legal battles took shape, the streets of Ahmedabad were writing a different kind of response. The community's path to healing. In the aftermath of the Air India flight AI-171 crash, the city of Ahmedabad has been grappling with both emotional and physical scars. The crash site, centered around the hostel of a medical college in the Meghani Nagar district, was left in ruins, a skeletal frame of charred concrete and twisted metal. Municipal authorities moved quickly to cordon off the area for safety assessments while working with Air India to clear debris from key infrastructure. The once bustling neighborhood was transformed into a zone of mourning, where the scale of loss was measured not just in lives, but in shattered community spaces. As emergency recovery gave way to long-term healing, local institutions began planning for a permanent memorial. A group of architects and alumni from the affected medical college volunteered to design a memorial garden at the crash site. The proposed space will feature a quiet reflection area, engraved plaques listing the names of all 274 victims, and a symbolic sculpture representing flight and remembrance. The goal is to honor both the passengers aboard AI-171 and the innocent bystanders slain on the ground, making it not only a tribute, but also a place for collective reflection and resilience. Community support has been the lifeline of this recovery. Volunteers and counselors, NGOs flooded in those days after the catastrophe with food and shelter to evicted residents, as well as psychosocial counseling for families, witnesses, and first responders. Local students aided in the development of memory booklets of personal stories of victims, and religious organizations organized multi-faith prayer services across temples, mosques, and churches. These formed an atmosphere of simpatico across Ahmedabad, uniting people from divisions due to their common loss and brooding. Digital platforms have thus become a mode of memorialization. An AI-171 tribute website was created with city authorities to provide live investigation updates, a digital memorial wall, and archiving materials for posterity. The social media campaigns #RememberI-171 and #Ahmedabad. Remembers continue to solicit tributes and testimonials from across the globe. As the city stands rebuilt, the efforts to memorialize the I-171 victims will serve not merely as acts of mourning, but resolute engagements, never to let the memory of the dead slide away, and the desire for that tragedy to enact permanent change. This fabric of resilience becomes brighter as institutions across Gujarat discuss the tragedy in the classroom context of crisis response, ethics, and aviation safety. At Gujarat University, a series of public seminars with the title Lessons from AI-171, Tragedy, Technology and Tomorrow attracted hundreds of students and faculty for a compelling discussion on the particular topic of collective responsibility and preparedness. For instance, Dr. Asha Mehta, a clinical psychologist and guest speaker at one such session, said, "Grief doesn't just reside in families, it embeds itself in the social fabric. Healing, therefore, has to happen across generations and across spaces of learning." Such initiatives motivate young people to channel their grief through advocacy, research, and creative expression so that this memory from AI-171 will be a source of growth as well as sorrow. Thanks for watching. If this story gripped you like it did us, don't forget to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more in-depth coverage on major aviation events. Got theories or questions? Drop them below, We read every one. To watch more videos like this, click the next video now showing on your screen. See you there.